So Matt Taibbi has been very prominent in the news for the last few months based on the Twitter files, but like really had all eyes focused on him last week because of testifying and just the absolute asses that Democrats made of themselves. I mean, that was like, might have been the worst governmental shit show I've ever seen. It was super embarrassing.
So embarrassing. Yeah, I think it was like a record low for our democracy.
Right. But you know, it was so I was looking at him, and it was him who found. I mean, Michael Schellenberger played his part there, and I have my thoughts and concerns about Schellenberger, but I actually think on some level, sitting through what he just sat through might help him to like move an inch closer to the like outside of the op realm, because that was so crazy. But the fact that Matt Taibbi was the person at the center of that, like, I feel like that was the moment that, like, I guess if there was a moment where the United States was gone, I'm not saying I think the United States was ever a wonderful thing or not, but at the moment where we crossed over from like one timeline to the next timeline, it was when he was called the so-called journalist, and when Debbie Wasserman Schultz like berated him for making a living as a journalist, right? It was just kind of like, it's all over then, right? It's all over. So I have this weird, I've always been a fan of his work, right? Like I don't like from the time he started writing in Rolling Stone, like I feel like he is a person who has pretty much maintained his journalistic integrity based on what he says he believes. I don't see him stepping outside of the things he believes to be true in furtherance of some political motive or anything like that, which doesn't mean I agree with him about everything, but I can't. And I've spent a lot of time in the last week listening to a lot of Matt Taibbi just to sort of check, because I knew I was going to talk about this. Like, the one criticism I would level at him is that sometimes when other people say things aggressively that he knows not to be true, he doesn't always push back with enough verve. But I don't hear things coming out of his mouth that are contradictory, that are not integrous. He admits when he's wrong, he changes his mind, he talks about it publicly and whatnot. So I've been checking to make sure that I'm not being deeply fooled by this person, and I've checked it a lot of different ways. Right. So, but I have this weird, but I think the first place I ever saw Matt Taibbi was when he was like on Rachel Maddow, when I used to be a libtard, talking about like the banking shit in 2008. Remember, he's the person who coined the whole sentence about Goldman Sachs as like the vampire squid sucking on humanity or whatever. Right. So I followed him for a long time. I had this weird thing happen, and I've talked about it before, but I've never really talked about it with you. And I want to, I think there's a deeper meaning to this that I want to get at, because it was him. It wasn't someone else. It was him. And then he was in that spot. So I was at a party in downtown Los Angeles. I'm pretty sure the party was on, I'm pretty sure the party was on Flower. It was not too far from Pershing Square, which is significant for a lot of other reasons for me right now. But I'm going to show you. So the party was somewhere around here. When I'm at home next time, I'm going to go and find exactly the address of the building, right? But here's Pershing Square. This was after I had moved away from downtown. But when I lived downtown, I lived right here. So Pershing Square was right here.
That's where Sally's place was.
Yes, I lived right across the street from where, but I didn't know Sally then when I lived there. I don't think she was there when I lived there. She was right near the last bookstore.
Yep,
right?
same
Lisa Lamb, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so Pershing Square is here. Mm-hmm. And I can't, so then you have Olive Street, Grand Street, Hope Street, and then I think the next street is Flower. Mm-hmm. It was in this area right over here, and somewhere in this area. I'm going to drive by when I'm there next time and get the exact address in the building. And the party was in like what looks more like an office building, which most of the parties I go to are more in like warehouses or industrial locations. Every once in a while, there'll be something in this regular part of the city. But it was in like an office building, which was weird. And then it was also not on the first floor. It was like on the second floor. And
I'm sorry, can you go back? I am a little bit slow today because of the fasting brain,
yeah.
but my eye just kept being drawn to the Jonathan Club. Have you dug in?
I've been to the Jonathan Club. So that's funny because when I was talking about this either on a show or in a private chat with somebody the other day, and I marked I said the exact same thing. Okay, so my mom, so here's, all right, where's Jonathan Club? Where did you, let's get
Top left. I think you have to scroll
there
back.
it is. Okay. So my mom worked at the Arco Towers that were like right here,
Yep.
right? They're not right. So, and I went to a wedding once at the Jonathan Club. My dad's student who went on to work for George Bush, his name is Sean Walsh, got married here on Figueroa. My mom's office was right there at Arco Plaza, which was between Flower and Figueroa, right? And my mom had told me once that like when she first started working at Arco, women couldn't go to lunch at the Jonathan Club, and some people from her work did, right? Because it's literally connected almost underground to the Arco Towers. But by the time she left working at Arco, you could go there, but she didn't like going there. It felt very uncomfortable, right? So it's a men's club.
Yes.
It's basically mostly a men's club, right? So that's funny that you pull this
I've
out.
also been there too.
You've been there as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's in this same strip. It's all right over here, right? Okay. So I was at this party, and it was an absurd party. And absurd is like my favorite party that I've ever been to.
Hey, superstars. Thank you so much for sharing your sacred attention with me. If you are receiving any value whatsoever from my videos, I am encouraging you to give back, to pay it forward by supporting me on my Patreon community, on my locals community, on both. Your support allows me to keep on keeping on and to keep making content like this. It used to be much easier back in the days of a free press, but now given all of the censorship and the shadow banning, it really is challenging for content creators to continue to put out so much work. I'll just speak for myself. I'm excited for it to be easier for me to continue to put out more content. And the primary way that it can be easier is by you supporting me financially by way of my Patreon and or my locals, where for as little as $5 a month, you get to be my hero and receive oodles of bonus content, and we both get to win. Okay, thank you so much for your support, for your attention, and for being omniscopic amazingness. I have to do this again. I'm sorry. Go back.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. This is how we do it.
Because I just saw something else.
Yeah.
Do you see the LA Athletic Club?
Where am I looking?
Pershing Square, go down and to the left. That's another men's club.
Wait, where am I seeing it? I don't see it. Here's Pershing Square.
So go down and then over to the left in red, the Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, I see it. Okay. Yeah, I just saw something else too.
So I'm pretty sure, I don't know what that is now, but back when I lived in the rodeo grounds in Topanga, that land was owned by a private segregated men's club called the Los Angeles Athletic Club. So I'm just kind of looking as you're giving us this map, the private clubs that are
every anchor. And I just noticed something I hadn't noticed before.
Okay.
Ketchum Downtown YMCA. For those who've tracked Michael and I, Ketchum is the name of the doctor that we believe his mother was the secretary for at Edgewood Arsenal, who did the PCP trials, as well as the last name of someone my father was in a relationship with. And this comes up in a show I'm about to put out next week as well with James Johansson, right? So my dad was in a relationship with someone who caused a lot of problems for me, and her last name was Church Ketchum. And Ketchum is the doctor who did experiments that were part of what were revealed later in the church committee as MKUltra documents.
Oh, I just got
So I did never notice this here, but look at this. So this is Ketchum Downtown YMCA. So we have the Jonathan Club. Oh my God, you want to know what's crazy? Her son's name was Jonathan.
Okay.
Her son's name was Jonathan, and we have the Los Angeles Athletic Club. We have Pershing, and then all the weird Elisa Lam stuff and where I lived over here.
Yep.
Okay. All right. We could probably do this all day, but
let's I'll stop.
Pull ourselves away for for now. Okay. So Absurd were my favorite parties ever. It was a series of parties that went on in Los Angeles in the early 2000s. Right. And it was like acidy tech house and very like, I don't know, it's the best parties. Right. And one of the last ones was at this location. And it was after I had moved away from downtown, and I was there, and it was on the second floor of an office building, which is kind of weird, right? And it was sort of like in two rooms. It was like there was only one room for the DJ, but there was like a bar around the back room, and then this other area was where the DJ was. And it's not the kind of place you would normally go, oh, this is a great place for sound. So I don't know why they ended up there. But the Absurd parties were some of the most occulted parties I ever went to, but I don't know how aware they were of that, right? I don't know what was I don't know what or who was sort of like picking the dates and the locations, arranging the coordinates and whatnot, right? But I had a lot of my initiatory higher kinds of experiences at Absurd parties, right? So I went with my friend Jason, as I often do, right? And enjoying the music and whatever. And at a certain point, I suddenly looked around and realized I was not in the same place anymore. Like I had been in a room in front of the DJ where there was lots of people around, right? And it was like black and dark, the room. And the room where the bar was that was connected had like a red light on in there. And all of a sudden I was hearing the same music, but it sounded a little different. But the sounding different can be explained by like, you know how when you take mushrooms, like at a certain point when it hits you, everything sounds a little different than it did before. It said like, right. So it was like that, but that part had already happened for me. Like I was on the part of the mushrooms where that had already happened. And suddenly everything just felt like, have you been into a recording studio that's one of those like suspended rooms where everything is suspended? So it's floating above the ground and that makes for a perfect sound. Have you ever been in one of those?
I mean, I've been to the Integratron.
Probably. Okay. I've not been inside the Integratron. So maybe like that. But if you go to like a recording studio or with someone who's like very sound precise type of person who's right, their room will be suspended. Like the inside of the room where like everything is on will be suspended from like so that it's not touching the floor, right, kind of thing. And the edges will all be rounded for perfect sound. All of a sudden it felt like that. And this was not the kind of building. I've been to buildings that are designed to almost have that effect. This was not that kind of building. So everything started to sound like that. And I suddenly realized there was only a few people in the room. And it was like suddenly like white and smoky in there, like misty, right? Like fog, like you would think in a dream sequence or something. And there was just like me and I'd say like 3 or 4 other people. There might have been a few more people up close to the DJ booth, but back like where I was dancing, where there had been 40, 50, 60 people, all of a sudden there was just 3 or 4 people. And each one of us was in our own like octagon shaped thing or Merkaba shaped thing or something that had a neon light around it. And we were all popping, but like, it was like there was an awareness for each person that like, this is my one, yours is yours. You stay in your dancing space, I'll stay in mine. And I looked over and the person to my right was Matt fucking Taibbi, right?
What year was this?
This was like 2014. So I had moved away from downtown LA in like January of 2013. And I think this was probably sometime in the spring to early summer of 2014. Okay. And I look over and I see, and I'm just going to be very clear so there's no confusion. I am not saying that Matt Taibbi was there.
Right.
But for some reason, his avatar, his likeness, something like, and this was not, I was not like, he's not a person that I think about all the time, right? Like there's people, whether they be like artists or musicians or something or other that are like frequent, like influencers on my mind in some way, less now than ever. But it's not like he's someone I think about all the time. When I would get my Rolling Stone magazine, if there was an article by him, I'd read it. If there was if he was on one of the shows I watched it, that by that time I was already a conspiracy theorist, but like back in like 2007, 2008, when I was still a libtard, I would see him on MSNBC or whatever it was, right? So I would think about him only when I was directly looking at him on TV, or he wasn't in my mind otherwise. So I look over it and he's there and he's like popping and dancing and whatever. And I was like, oh my God, that's fucking Matt Taibbi. That's fucking weird. But like, it was obvious to me that like, we're all in a place where we're all like, we're cool. Like everyone comes here so they can dance without being bumped into or bothered or been like, hey, that's my Taibbi or whatever it is. Right. And no one ever bumped into each other or stepped out of their dance space. It was all exactly what you and I fantasized for.
I was just going to say, God, I wish this was how it was.
Right. And so like, I'm there and I'm this and like, everything seemed exactly the same, but everything felt a little bit more like sharp and crisp and almost like more futuristic, more perfect, more, right. And I'm there and all of a sudden I was like, where's Jason? Because I realized everybody's gone. Right. All the people that were there are not there. There's no room with a bar over there or anything like that. And the moment I was like, where's Jason? I was back in the room with all the fucking people. Right. And I was like, okay, that was fun. I didn't get it at that moment. I thought maybe I had just been in like when the cartoons, when they're fantasizing about like when Sylvester's fantasizing about eating Tweety or whatever. Right. And then a little bit later, it happened again. And it happened like 3 or 4 times over the course of the night. And every time the thing that would end it was when I thought about Jason.